So let's get into it. This is going to be a rant. I'm wearing my Trixie and Katya shirt because this is going to be a Drag Race related rant. So here's the thing. So today I read an article that was shared by Carmen Carerra, which is interesting to me because I actually forgot I still followed her on Facebook. But she shared this article that was basically about how, drag queen, or we need to stop letting cis drag queens determine what is and isn't transphobia. And it was mostly talking about RuPaul because obviously, and it was basically the premise of the article, and one of the things that really set me off and made me want to do this rant was there was a part of the article where it basically said, or not even basically, it straight up said that Drag Race is damaging almost exclusively because most people confuse drag and being trans. That is literally, look, I will get you a direct quote. Hold on a second. Because it's that important that I get this right, because this is ridiculousness. And so this was the article. It was from Affinity magazine. It came out in February of 2017. Okay. Waiting. Okay. The article is "Stop Letting Cis Drag Queens Decide What's Homophobic." Okay? So here is where I took the most issue. Drag Race is damaging because generally cis people lump drag queens and trans women into the same category. Though there have been trans drag queens, several even coming out on Drag Race, generally drag queens are cis men dressing up for fun. Now, let me just get into those two parts, right? That Drag Race is damaging because cis people, confuse drag queens and trans people. This is the thing that I think a lot of trans people need to kind of figure out and understand. And, listen, I'm not an expert. I'm not here to tell the entire community what to think. But I feel like when it comes to issues like this, we really need to understand a few things. Not the least of which is whether we like it or not, we are the LGBTQIA community, shorthand queer community, because that is just, there's too many letters. And I feel like we're still leaving people out, even with all the letters we have tried to kind of add. So I think it's very, very important that we use the shorthand queer community. That's just me. That's a whole nother rant. But the reality is, whether we like it or not, drag queens are playing with gender. They are going outside of the gender norms and what is expected of them, by their gender. And I think it's really, really important that we not just assume that drag queens are cis men, and that we understand that drag queens are a part of the overarching transgender umbrella. Trans doesn't just mean what I think we used to believe it meant. Trans has really become an umbrella term that focuses on anybody who doesn't fit into the traditional gender narrative, and I think that's how it very much should be. The second issue I took with this quote is the idea that drag queens are cis men playing for fun. We all know, yes, this is a job, and yes, this is probably fun for drag queens, but the idea that they're playing really kind of bugs me as well. You don't know the majority of drag queens' lives and what they're doing and what they consider themselves. There's actually a lot more drag queens than we realize who consider themselves to be somewhere on the gender spectrum. Jinx Monsoon, winner of season 5, who is, on the trans spectrum. They are non-binary. They use they, them pronouns. It's more than just, trans woman and trans man. And I think it's really unfortunate that the, more binary part of the community is trying to push back against drag queens. I believe Violet Chachki, also a winner, this one of season 7, has said that she feels, or they feel, they fall somewhere on the trans spectrum, leaning towards non-binary as well. So that's another performer you can count, someone who considers themselves somewhere on the trans spectrum. A lot of these queens may not recognize themselves as trans women, like, you know, Peppermint, like Sonique, like queens like that. However, that, or Gia Gunn, Jiggly Caliente, some of the newer ones, that does not make them any less on the transgender spectrum. And I think it's important that we support one another, especially in this time. And I just want to point something out, if I may. I'm not in any way defending the unfortunate incidents in which Drag Race has been transphobic. Of course there have been transphobic incidents. That's just, you know, I don't want to defend it, but again, it's something that I can't overstate enough, that being a part of the queer community does not mean that you get a free pass. Unfortunately, what a lot of trans people like to forget is that you can be transphobic and be trans. You can be homophobic and be trans. You can be a lot of things and still be a trans person, and especially transphobic. I'm sorry. There are many, many instances of transgender people who say things that are blatantly transphobic and blatantly against what I think a lot of trans people want the narrative to be for our community. And I think to sit here and suggest that, you know, a few mistakes, first of all, several seasons ago, is one of the things they're still bringing up, one of the things that RuPaul has since apologized for and was very much rectified on the show. You cannot even find that particular mini challenge on the show anymore. So I don't understand why people are still so, like, harboring onto this. I am not saying that RuPaul is by any means perfect when it comes to the transgender issue, but she's learning and she's growing, and I think that's important because all of us are learning and growing on this issue. I have to admit, and I don't normally say this, and a lot of people don't realize this, before I transitioned, I identified as a gay male. That's how I saw myself. I didn't actually know, you know, from a super young age, because I didn't think about my gender in those terms as a child. I knew that I wanted girls' things. I knew that I wanted girls' clothes, but I can't honestly say I knew that I wanted to be a girl because I didn't process it that way. That wasn't how my mind saw things. I didn't think anything of it, and because my mother never made a big deal about it, it just wasn't an issue. And before I came out as transgender, I really didn't think a lot about the trans community. In fact, I don't think, you know, I had seen a few documentaries on Logo, naturally, and, you know, I had heard of trans people, but it seemed to me the most trans people you saw were people who were older, you know, in their maybe 40s plus. It really wasn't until I hit college and I met a trans man that I really saw someone who was my age, who was a lot like me, who was, you know, an effeminate gay man, who I realized, oh my God, it's more than just these images that I had seen before. And I really couldn't believe it. And we became really good friends, and ultimately, I think my interactions with him kind of helped me realize who I really was. But the truth is, I didn't think about the trans side of the community before. I didn't. I wasn't outwardly transphobic, but I just wasn't thinking about it. The reality is, I have never gotten harmful from Drag Race or from RuPaul herself. That's my own personal experience. And one of the things that frustrated me is they were talking about, in the article, this person was talking about, you know, the privilege of RuPaul as a cis gay man being able to not be offended by the word tranny. Now, here's something I want to talk about just as a side note to this, but it still relates. Back when this whole she-male issue first started in season 6, I remember there were several comments, actually not even just several, there were multiple, tons of comments from trans people who said, oh, how would Ru like it if we called him a faggot? Like, all this stuff using, like, these gay slurs. And I just really saw that I don't know how you think you're... It baffled me because I don't know, A, how you think you're proving a point with this. Like, unfortunately, I feel like this argument really brought out the worst in people, and it brought out really just ridiculous arguments. First of all, I think we all know Ru doesn't give 3 shits what the fuck you call him. He really doesn't. So that's number 1. Number 2, though, I think you're not proving that you have the higher ground by saying, oh, well, how would you like it if we called you a faggot? That's not the higher ground, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. I can't. I literally cannot even with this topic because it's so frustrating to me and so annoying to me that I honestly cannot believe that I'm sitting here making this video. And it's not that I have to, it's not that anyone requested me to, but I'm making this video because I honestly cannot believe that this is something that is still being talked about, that we're still debating this, that this is still an issue here. I recognize that as a trans woman, it's pretty fucking annoying sometimes because there's a lot of people who want to talk a lot of shit and want to question my femininity and my womanhood. But the reality is, the only person whose opinion really matters to me is fucking me. I don't need RuPaul to understand anything about what it means to be a trans woman. I frankly don't need them to understand anything about the trans community at all. I don't need Ru to validate me as a trans person, and I certainly don't need anyone to validate me as a woman, except me. At the end of the day, I think we have bigger things to worry about. Transphobia is alive and well, and that is very, very true. Danger to trans people and violence against trans people is very, very real and still very, very much an issue. But I'll be 100% real when I tell you I would rather someone call me a tranny 1,000 times over than someone punch me or kill me. I really would. You can call me any fucking name you want. I'm not worried about that. And you know what? The thing of it is, I think T.S. Madison said this topic best when she was talking about Carmen Carerra and this bullshit back during season 6. When she said, I don't give a damn what you call me. I care when you deny me food, when you deny me housing, when you deny me, you know, the things I need to live. That's what the fuck I care about. You can call me whatever the fuck you want. And I 100% agree with what she said. And, you know, one last thought before I go. It goes back to this topic of we are so comfortable nowadays throwing someone under the bus for the most minor infraction. You know, you get this thing where it's like, oh, this person's my fave, but then they do something, you know, slightly fucked up, and all of a sudden, fuck them, I don't want nothing to do with them, blah, 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 blah. I really, really have a problem with that, and I really just can't with that. I really can't. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, bye.